Imagine a world on the brink of an unfathomable storm, a storm that would change the course of history forever. This isn't a tale of fiction or the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster. This, my friends, is the stark reality of our past. Picture the year 1914, a time when the world was on the cusp of a cataclysmic event, an event that would shake humanity to its very core, causing destruction and loss of life on an unprecedented scale. A conflict so intense, so widespread, it was unlike any the world had ever seen before. Nations were pitted against one another, alliances were formed and broken, and humanity was plunged into a dark abyss of violence and despair. This was not just a war, it was a global catastrophe, a seismic shift in the annals of human history. This was the start of what we know today as World War I. The fuse was lit with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. This single event, a bullet fired by a Serb nationalist on a sunny day in Sarajevo, set in motion a series of events that would change the course of history. In the heart of Europe, a continent already brimming with nationalistic fervor, militaristic ambitions, and imperialistic tendencies, the assassination of the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne was the spark that ignited the powder keg. This was no ordinary political murder. It was a tremor that shook the fragile equilibrium, pushing the major powers of the world towards an unprecedented conflict. The political climate at the time was a complex web of alliances and rivalries. Austria-Hungary, feeling threatened and seeking retribution, declared war on Serbia. This was not a battle to be fought in isolation. The intricate system of alliances, designed to maintain peace, ironically, dragged nation after nation into the fray. Russia, bound by its Slavic brotherhood, entered to defend Serbia. Germany, allied to Austria-Hungary, was pulled in too, and soon France and Britain, tied by the Entente Cordiale, joined the conflict. These were not just any countries, they were the world's major powers, each with its vast empires and spheres of influence. Germany, the rising industrial power, Britain, the ruler of the world's largest empire, and France, the cultural heart of Europe, were all drawn into this escalating crisis. The alliances, once a deterrent, now fueled the fire, turning a regional conflict into a global war. In this cauldron of tension and suspicion, the assassination served as the perfect excuse for each nation to assert its dominance, to protect its interests, to demonstrate its military might. The world watched in disbelief as diplomatic solutions fell by the wayside and nations prepared for war. And so, the world was plunged into a war like no other. The stage was set, the players were ready, and the powder keg, now ignited, was about to explode into the most devastating conflict the world had ever witnessed. The war was fought on multiple fronts, with soldiers facing horrors unimaginable. Picture this, you're a soldier, huddled in a trench, the smell of damp earth and the sounds of distant gunfire, your constant companions. This was the reality for many during World War I, a war unlike any before it. In the span of 4 long years from 1914 to 1918, the world bore witness to battles of epic proportions. Battles like the Battle of the Somme and the Battle of Verdun, where millions of lives were lost, etching indelible scars on the landscape and the psyche of nations. Trench warfare, a term that still evokes images of mud-soaked soldiers and the deafening roar of artillery fire, was a defining feature of this war. The trenches, a maze of narrow winding pathways, were not just lines on a map, but homes to these soldiers. They were places of camaraderie, fear, and endurance. And then, there was the introduction of new weaponry and technology, forever altering the way wars were fought. The use of tanks, machine guns, and poison gas brought a new level of destruction and fear to the battlefield. The sky, once a symbol of freedom, became a theater of war with the advent of fighter planes. The world was witnessing a mechanized war, a chilling precursor to what was to come in the following decades. The scale of this war was staggering. Millions of soldiers from around the globe were thrown into this crucible of violence and destruction, their bravery and sacrifice a testament to the human spirit in the face of such overwhelming adversity. The face of warfare was changing, and with it, the world. The echoes of this monumental conflict continue to reverberate through the corridors of history, a stark reminder of the cost of war and the resilience of those who fight it. While battles raged on, the war also took a toll on the home front. The echoes of the war were not contained to the battlefield. They reverberated through every corner of society, seeping into the homes and lives of civilians far removed from the front lines. The war was not just a clash of armies, but a struggle that reshaped the world. Economically, the war imposed a heavy burden. It devoured resources, disrupted trade, and forced nations to borrow heavily. Inflation skyrocketed, and the cost of living soared, making every day a battle for survival. Many faced hardships beyond comprehension, struggling to put food on the table while dealing with the loss of loved ones. The war also transformed the role of women. As men marched off to fight, women stepped into the void they left behind. They took up jobs in factories, working long hours under difficult conditions to produce the weapons and ammunition needed for the war. Their contribution was immense, and it marked a turning point in the recognition of women's capabilities and rights. Propaganda became a powerful weapon, wielded to maintain morale and stir up support for the war effort. It painted a picture of heroism and patriotism, often masking the grim reality of the battlefield. The media was used to control information, manipulate public opinion, and keep the wheels of war turning. And amidst all this upheaval, people lived their lives. They loved, they grieved, they hoped, and they feared. They faced the war with resilience and courage, even as it changed their world in ways they could never have imagined. The war was not just fought on the battlefield, but also in the hearts and minds of people back home. It was a war that tested the strength of nations, but more than that, it tested the spirit of humanity. The cost was high, but the resilience was remarkable. In 1918, after 4 long years of destruction and despair, the war came to an end. The guns fell silent, and the world drew a collective breath of relief. Yet, the end of the war was not the end of the story. It was merely the turning of a page, the start of a new chapter. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in a railcar in France, marked the formal end of the war. It was a moment of hope, a promise of peace, but it also sowed the seeds of future conflict. Germany was held responsible for the war and was burdened with heavy reparations, a decision that would stoke resentment and fuel the fires of another great war just 2 decades later. The cost of the war was staggering. An estimated 9 million soldiers lost their lives, and countless civilians perished. Cities were reduced to rubble, landscapes were transformed into barren wastelands, and entire generations were scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The world had never seen destruction on such a scale, and the shockwaves of this cataclysmic event would reverberate through the decades. Geopolitically, the war changed the face of the world. Empires crumbled, new nations emerged, and the map of Europe was redrawn. The Russian Revolution, triggered in part by the war, would set the stage for a new ideological conflict that would shape the 20th century. Yet, amid the devastation, there were also seeds of hope. The League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, was established in an attempt to prevent future wars. It was a noble endeavor, though it would ultimately prove inadequate in the face of rising tensions and emerging threats. The war had ended, but its echoes would be heard for generations to come. Its impact was far-reaching, touching every corner of the globe and shaping the world as we know it. It was a harsh reminder of the cost of conflict, a lesson we must never forget. World War I, a global conflict that forever changed the course of human history. The storm that had been brewing unseen ignited a powder keg of tensions that swept across continents. On the war front, brave souls faced harrowing battles, while the home front bore the cost of conflict, forever altering daily life. The war's end brought not just relief, but a world forever scarred and shaped by its aftermath. World War I was a testament to humanity's resilience in the face of adversity, a stark reminder of the devastating power of conflict and the irreversible changes it brings. It highlighted the cost of global tensions, the importance of diplomacy, and the dire need for peace. The lessons learned from this war still echo today, influencing international relations, shaping nations, and impacting daily life. In remembering World War I, we honor those who lost their lives and remind ourselves of the devastating cost of war. May peace prevail.